Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline, and I'm your host for this Naval Postgraduate School Foundation sponsored segment of YourTown, where we focus on interesting faculty and students and staff of the Naval Postgraduate School. One of the interesting, diverse aspects of Naval Postgraduate School is the fact that we have international officers that benefit from our graduate degree programs, but also contribute to the richness of our graduate education experience for our students and make contributions to our local community. Today, and for this segment, we have Captain Al Scott, who is the director of our international programs, to talk a little bit about that. Al, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be with you.
I start every show trying to find out a little bit more about you and for our audience as well. Now, you are a retired Navy captain, so tell us first how you got into the Navy and what did you do in the Navy?
Well, I grew up in Arizona in the desert.
Well, that makes perfect sense then.
It makes perfect sense that I'd look for some water somewhere. So I was looking when I was in high school for a good engineering school, and I also was interested in aviation and flying and serving my country. And so the Naval Academy was one of the great options. Also looked at going to the Air Force Academy.
Oh, yes.
But, yeah, and it would also have been a great option, but I had the opportunity to visit Annapolis the summer before my senior year of high school, and the place just really struck me as a phenomenal place where there were so many different opportunities for things to do and experiences that I wasn't familiar with being a kid from Arizona.
Well, let's kind of pause there because let's do a commercial for the United States Naval Academy here for a moment, for all the people who watch the show. So you got an opportunity to travel there in their summer program, is that right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about who that is offered to, including the local high school students here.
Well, they have a program where local high school students can participate for a week-long period and get a feel for what it's like to be a midshipman there at the Naval Academy. Typically, you can get connected into those programs through the Blue and Gold officer, who is a local individual who acts as a liaison.
And that Blue and Gold officer represents the academy in the local regions.
As far as the selection process. And
great.
So that's
so we captured you in that summer intern and program. And what did you decide to do once you graduated?
Well, I had planned to be a pilot, was ready to go, and came to be my physical before graduation, and lo and behold, my eyes were 20/25 instead of the required 20/20.
And in those days, you couldn't get them corrected.
No laser surgery in those days, unfortunately.
Right.
So I wound up becoming a naval flight officer.
Okay, what's the difference? Tell us what a naval flight officer is.
Backseater, in essence, usually a weapons systems operator in fighter-type aircraft, or in the aircraft I flew, the P-3, started out as a navigator communicator and then became a tactical coordinator who basically oversees the mission employment of the aircraft and the entire crew as kind of the mission commander.
Oh, you're being modest. What you're saying is you're the real submarine hunter. The guy in front was just driving around where you told him to.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. So the bus drivers, is what we call them. Yeah.
The P-3 is a patrol aircraft, and that's recently been replaced by the P-8. Is that
P-8,
right?
Yes.
But nevertheless, we still have naval flight officers that do the mission commander portion of that role.
That's correct.
So, and what are the different places you lived when you had that job?
Well, I actually started out flying operationally at Moffett Field.
Oh, is that right?
Was my
really?
first
California?
Tour. Yeah.
Wow.
And had the opportunity to fly all over the Pacific, to the Indian Ocean, spent time in places like Somalia, Oman, Djibouti, and then as far to the north as Alaska, operated in the Bering Sea.
Good grief.
And then Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, Japan, Thailand. Just had a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Join the Navy and see the world.
And you did.
Truly did, yes.
So had you known about NPS while you were on active duty, or how did you come about coming here?
I did know about NPS, but more so because of the proximity to Moffett Field.
Sure.
And I did have friends that came down here for graduate degrees. I wound up instead going to test pilot school in Patuxent River, Maryland, and wound up getting involved in flight testing and aerospace engineering. But at that point had the opportunity to come to Monterey for a master's degree in astronautical engineering.
Oh, so you
that's-
came here in astronautical engineering for
Yes.
your master's degree.
Yes.
And
in
then
the mid-90s.
what did you do with that particular degree program? Is that part of the test school that you talked about?
That was after I completed test pilot school and had done a tour in the flight test world.
Right.
I transitioned to aerospace engineering duty officer as,
Okay.
as a career field because it was a great marriage of the operational flying world and engineering.
Well, now, not a lot of our audience understands the subtlety of different officers and their different career paths. So
Yes.
you were first a naval flight officer in P3s, operational, and then because your graduate degree program, you shifted to a staff corps. Is that AD or
It's
restricted line, which
yes.
which is focused on a particular area.
Right.
And so what did you do in that job?
So initially flight testing and engineering work, and actually kind of took a little bit of a diversion and wound up working on space programs
Oh,
for the
wow.
Navy and got involved in classified satellite programs, not only for the Navy but for other organizations.
And is that how you were invited back to MPS to be an active duty at MPS?
Yes, so I eventually had the opportunity at a senior point in my career to be able to come back as an instructor and program officer for the space systems and astronautical engineering programs.
And what did you teach when you were there?
I taught satellite design and operational employment of our satellite systems and things like that.
Now, do we actually build satellites at the postgraduate school?
We do actually. We have a pretty robust satellite engineering program, both engineering and operations. We've built a couple of small satellites in the past. One that is getting ready to launch here, hopefully fairly soon, NPSat.
Right. And what does MPSat do?
It has several different experiments on it that were designed, some by the Naval Research Lab, for space environment, studying space environment and electromagnetic propagation and things like that.
And the students are actually involved in building these satellites, is that right?
Yes.
That's great. And so what is the launch vehicle?
I believe NPSat is launching on a space test program satellite vehicle, and because I'm now in the international program office, I'm not so attached to that. I think is an Atlas, but don't quote me on that.
That's okay. Well, how long does it take normally to build one of those?
For a small satellite, it can be anywhere from a year to several years. NPSat is the development of that has gone longer, partially because you want to involve students in the thesis, research process, and
sure.
so we've had a lot of students engaged in that for their thesis work. So we tend to take a little bit more time to involve the students in the research and the development and the building of the satellite.
That's great, which is a constant theme through the school throughout.
Right.
But then you transitioned, another word for retired from the Navy, and you became our Director of International Programs. So tell us a little bit about that international program and why it's so important to have our allied countries participate in our graduate studies.
Well, despite the fact that we're the Naval Postgraduate School and our primary mission is to educate naval officers, there's a recognition that just about everything that we do these days from a defense standpoint involves our partner countries, and we work in coalition environment. So there's a strong philosophy at NPS, which is also shared at the highest levels of the Navy and the Department of Defense, that our education and research activities should also be conducted in a coalition kind of environment. And the fact that we bring in international students into NPS provides great benefit not only to them by virtue of the education that they're getting, but also provides great benefit to our students, as well as the country is from the standpoint of developing relationships that we can leverage over the long term, having those students get more familiar with the U.S. and our way of life, and also the junior officers typically that we have on board here who are a lot of sharp, wonderful individuals, and developing those close ties can really provide great benefit.
Well, do all the international programs take one course of study? I mean, international officers take one course of study?
No, they're actually interspersed throughout all of our programs. Virtually all of the degree programs that U.S. students can participate in, the international students participate in. So they're in class with the U.S. students together, and we have international students that are involved in anywhere around 35 or so different degree programs at NPS, so very diverse educational opportunities.
Well, tell us about some of the countries that actually attend MPS.
So we typically have somewhere a little over 200 international students on board at any given time from 40 to 50 different countries.
Wow.
So there's a huge diversity of different countries that we interact with. We've had 117, or graduates rather, from 117 different countries.
Oh gosh.
Over since we've been tracking in the 1950s. So very large number of countries that we interact with and bring students in from. Some of the major countries that we have more students from are in the Pacifics, Singapore, Korea, Indonesia, quite a few, Taiwan, Europe, a lot of students from Germany, Turkey in the past, Asia, a lot of students from Pakistan. So very diverse. And then from there, onesie, twosie, more kind of engagement with many other countries.
Do they frequently bring their families with them?
Most of the time they do. Most of the international students that we have are similar to the U.S. students in that they have spent probably 8 to 10 years in the military. They've served several tours, so they're operationally experienced, and they bring that experience with them as well.
Sure.
But they also often have families. So they typically will bring their families. A lot of times they will live in the housing areas that our students live in, La Mesa housing area or the Ord military community. And then sometimes they also live out in the community and rent homes and apartments as well. So.
Now, we just graduated someone for the first time from a country for the first time in our last graduation. Where was that from?
That student was from Mali. He was
from Mali.
Our first graduate from Mali, and that's a very interesting fact because we've actually he's now being followed by an additional 12 students from Mali.
Wow, so he was the test case.
So he was the test case, and we have a very interesting program that's been developed where we have representatives from across the ministries in their government who are coming to school to develop a background in national security strategy and policy. And their goal is to develop a core of expertise across their various ministries.
To write their national security policy.
Exactly, to develop
Sure.
their national security policy because they've had challenges putting together a good interministerial coordination group that can do that.
Well, that's fascinating. That might serve as a template for other small countries.
And that's the hope, is that that's something that we can use not only for that type of topic, the strategy and policy kind of activities in our National Security Affairs Department, but also defense resource management, for example, bringing in different students from a single country to help improve their management of their resources and their processes for managing their not only their finances but their people, logistics support, that kind of thing. So we think that that's a model that could be applied to a lot of different disciplines.
Now, under the international programs, are all of them graduate programs, or do you have some shorter courses as well?
We have a variety of different courses. My office handles primarily the graduate students.
Mm-hmm.
We also have some students come in for 1 quarter certificate type programs, but they really consist of the same graduate level courses that our degree programs.
So they're integrated in with the students normally anyway.
Yeah. We also have organizations such as the Center for Civil Military Relations and Defense Resource Management Institute that offer short courses. So they both bring students in for 2 to 4 weeks at a time for courses here in residence, but they also send faculty out for training within countries. So within the NPS enterprise, we have a lot of different capabilities
to
interact with all these countries from a security cooperation standpoint.
Well, now tell us a little bit about what our international students do for the local community. They sponsor NPS International Day, so tell us a little bit about that.
International Day is one of the highlights of our year from an international program standpoint, and I think it's a pretty unique event from a community and NPS standpoint as well. It's right now the one event each year that the NPS campus is actually open to the community.
When is it held?
We held it back in April. It's generally the third week or so in April of every year. And we try to publicize it in local media so that we can ensure we get the word out to the community. And we welcome all the residents from Monterey. I probably have to be careful here not to overload things, but our students from all the countries that are represented put together displays highlighting the culture of their countries, and then they cook food. And so, so
and dancing?
Big, and they have dancing and other events as well. But of course, one of the highlights is the food. A lot of great food from many different countries.
What a great way to get an appreciation for both MPS and the culture and the international capabilities for our local community.
Yes.
So we only got a couple seconds left. One last question I ask all our guests. What do you like most about living in the Monterey Bay Peninsula?
Well, the thing that brought me back was the fact that my wife is from here.
Oh, that helps.
I was a student here, so one of the things I like best is that my wife is a native, and we were able to come back here to where her family is located. And otherwise, what's not to like about Monterey? It's a wonderful area, wonderful people, and I think, tying it back to the international program, one of the things that is so great about Monterey is that our international students feel so welcome in this environment. Monterey and the peninsula is an international community with Middlebury Institute, DLI with all of the instructors teaching so many different languages there. And so it's a very welcoming community, and leaves a great impression for our international students, and which is, a good reason to love being here.
Absolutely. Well, Al, thank you very much for your work as the Director of International Programs, and thank you for being on the YourTown television program for us.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for joining us for the Naval Postgraduate School Foundation sponsored segment of YourTown television program. I'm Jeff Kline, and I look forward to seeing you again next time we broadcast this segment.